Hey again, everyone. Welcome into another edition of Oklahoma Sooners Live, but this one a special edition. Why? Because it's the first one that we've done where it is game week. Tulane's on the docket. Oklahoma, Tulane, the opener. We've all been anticipating September 4th, of course, Saturday. And that's at noon Eastern, 11 Central, Oklahoma, Tulane. And again, we've done this for 18 times and many other segments with Jason Ray from Last Word on College Football, but this is the first time we've actually been able to preview a game that's front and center. Jason, how you doing today?
Doing good, Mark. Thanks for having me. It's good to finally be in game week, as you mentioned.
Absolutely. It is good to be in game week. Again, much is surrounding this game in regards to obviously the situation that is very urgent, very serious and critical down in the New Orleans area that has altered the circumstances surrounding the game. But Oklahoma and Tulane will tee it up, and the Sooners are a 31.5-point favorite. So, Jason, if we could start there just in regards to updating everyone on the change of plans.
Yeah, so honestly, Mark, I mean, as you mentioned, really unfortunate event. I think it was something that a lot of us saw coming. I think on Thursday or Friday there was some ominous updates just in terms of what may hit, and just certainly the thoughts and prayers are for the guys and for everybody there in New Orleans that's going through that. And I just, very ironic. I know that when the hurricane hit, I think it was 16 years to the actual day of Katrina. So obviously yes, that forced some changes, and I think it was originally thought that it probably wouldn't be that big of a deal in terms of kind of from a logistical perspective, because Oklahoma had a future date with Tulane in 2024. So I think the thought was, it seemed to be, I know it's a lot easier said than done, right, from a logistical perspective, but that game could easily be moved to Norman this year, and then 2024 could be moved to Tulane. However, I do know that the Tulsa athletic director just came out today and said that the 2024 game will still be in Norman, and then there's going to be a future game that's going to be scheduled in Tulane. So this year and then 2024 will be in Norman. I think the biggest logistical challenge, I think, is for, obviously those people that have bought tickets at Tulane. They have to reconcile that there. So Oklahoma mobilized pretty quickly. I think they had a plan in place late last week to be able to host this game. So obviously it'll be at Norman, same time, same television as far as that goes. I think Oklahoma was only selling tickets to the lower bowl, just because of just the inability to mobilize enough workers. But as far as that, everything's still obviously on as scheduled, and I think Oklahoma gets the benefit of an additional home game, which they'll have now. They'll have seven home games, one neutral site games, and then only 4 true road games. So not that this would, coming into it, Mark, you would think that this would be a significant challenge on the road. However, it does give Oklahoma 4 straight home games to start the season.
And we mentioned Oklahoma's status is a 31.5-point favorite according to Vegas. You can catch Jason and my picks and also 20 media members total on Patreon. Just go to Patreon, search MarkRogersTV. We picked the Nebraska, Illinois, and Hawaii UCLA games last weekend. But, of course, we're full throttle week 1. So here we go. Again, you can get the selections from both Jason and myself on Patreon, and also a total of 20 of your favorite media members, analysts that join us on a regular basis here at the Voice of College Football. Of course, you know the drill. Jason and I have no issues talking Oklahoma and college football for an hour plus, but we want to take your comments and questions and take them directly to Jason, and certainly I will chime in if I've got anything to say, so please leave them in the live chat. First and foremost, Jason, of course, Lincoln Riley and some members of the team met before the media. Anything that you could take from their comments in terms of what the focus is, the mindset of the team, and their priorities this week?
Yeah, so first and foremost, Mark, Lincoln Riley, if you've ever listened to any of his press conferences, he doesn't divulge a whole lot of information, and he's very even keel. This was the most animated that I've seen him in any kind of a press conference setting since he's been at Oklahoma. And I think a lot of that animation was really kind of directed towards the Trey Bradford situation. So there was a question that was asked of him, and he said, hey, I'm not pulling any punches. I'm not trying to tell you guys anything, not tell you guys anything that I know that I'm holding back. And basically he just said, I don't know what happened. I don't know. We had no indication that he was unhappy, no indication that he was, even considering entering the transfer portal wherever he ends up going back to LSU. So I think they were really taken by surprise and a little bit upset, I think, in the whole situation. And he talked about the successful transfers that Oklahoma has had, and this was one that, in his words, that they obviously swung and missed on. So I think that kind of delved into some other questions in terms of just what the running back room looks like. And, it's hard to tell, Mark, if he feels like this, if this is coach speak, or if this is really kind of the way he feels. But he did make the comment that he felt like the running back room of any room had the ability to absorb something like this close to the season, more than maybe some other areas on the team. So I think he talked about Jaden Knowles and Todd Hudson, the two walk-ons, being the primary number 3 and number 4 guys coming into at least at the first part of the season, and then really talked about if Oklahoma gets to a point where some of that depth is challenged through injuries or suspensions or whatever happens. Whatever happens through the course of the year, then, they may look at other areas within the team. You'd mentioned Brian Darby as a guy who's a wide receiver now, but did play running back in high school. So he actually mentioned there's a couple of other wide receivers that are certainly in that same situation. So he felt, so I think he's fairly confident with Jaden Knowles. I think was the first name that came out of his mouth in terms of who will probably see the field from a third team running back perspective. So I think that was interesting, kind of hearing him talk about that. He talked a little bit about the offensive line. We had talked about this with this, and then some of the individual stuff that I did that I had heard that Tyrese Robinson, who had started many games at guard, had moved over to right tackle. So I think the guards and the right tackle are pretty much solidified, with Marquise Hayes being your left guard, Chris Murray being the right guard, and then Tyrese Robinson getting the start over at right tackle. Talked a little bit about there's still some position battles going on at the center, which was a little bit shocking for me to hear, just in terms of that it's not quite in his mind solidified. In terms of the center and the left tackle position, specifically the center position. He talked about Andrew Raymond and Robert Conjal was the two guys that are working there. I have heard over the last week that Conjal has consistently made a big jump. Don't know how much of it is, he's challenging Raym for that starting center position, or more so it's just really kind of a depth situation that they're looking at. The left tackle, Anton Harrison and Wanye Morris, are battling there. So I think 3 of the top 5, and I think they'll make the decision on that Friday. I think just the other thing that was a little bit, and this kind of moving to the defensive side of the ball, when Alex Grinch talked a little bit to the media, he kind of spoke about the depth on the defensive line. And this isn't to concern Oklahoma fans watching this, but Perion Winfrey had been dinged up just a little bit. Nothing serious or anything that's going to keep him out, but it allowed some opportunity for some of those other kids among the defensive line interior, and I think from what I had heard, they really took advantage of that. So I think he feels strongly, about going 8 deep, from a defensive tackle interior perspective. So I think that's comforting to hear that that might be a position where they could. They could take some hits if they needed to. And then another kid that really talked a little bit about Justin Broyles, who's a guy, he's a senior here this year, for Oklahoma. He's been, he's a highly recruited kid out of the state of Oklahoma. Hasn't always just put it together. And really, he'd been forced into action a little bit previously. I think he played, certainly played a lot in the LSU game a couple of years ago when he was forced into duty with Delarian Turner-Yell out. Didn't really perform well, got exposed to a certain degree, but Grinch kind of talked about how great of a jump that he made in the spring, and that's really carried over to the fall. Grinch isn't really the type of guy that blows a lot of smoke. He's really very, he'll tell you straight up what who's playing well, who's not. So definitely wouldn't be surprised to see him in the rotation, and not really a guy that I thought probably would coming in make the two deep. So some interesting roster things kind of talking about. They talked about Caleb Kelly. Feel like that they could use him a little bit more at the rush linebacker edge position as opposed to kind of the Will and the Mike that he's played before. So I think that's interesting to see. And I know there's a lot of comments about the running backs here. One interesting. It doesn't really mean anything on the field, but it's kind of interesting to see the two walk-ons. Jaden Knowles is majoring in meteorology, so he's kind of a weatherman. Todd Hudson is a pilot, so I think that's just kind of, certainly bars no meaning whatsoever to their play on the field, but I thought it was just kind of interesting to mention that both of those kids are, from a field of study perspective, what they're interested in.
Yeah, I can't imagine that there are too many college football players with that same chosen field as it stands right now. So yeah. Very interesting there. Everybody out there, blame me for the new day and time. So basically the thought process was here that we were going every Friday at mid-afternoon, 2:30 Eastern, and it just didn't give people a lot of time to watch it, the video, if they were not able to get here live, to be able to watch it prior to Saturday's games. Once Saturday hits, of course, everybody's watching football, so it only gave the remainder of the day on Friday to watch our Oklahoma Lives here at the Voice of College Football. So we wanted to back that up a couple days, and Jason was able to accommodate that, so I thank him so much for that. So we will be here every Wednesday at 12:30 Eastern, 11:30 a.m. Central. And of course, that could change from time to time, but we were very consistent there on Friday. We hope to do the same here on Wednesday, but it's possible that on a given week that could change based on scheduling conflicts and so forth. So subscribe, hit that bell for the notifications, and that way you know when we're going live. And also Jason has taken to the live stream himself a few times. And of course, with post-game coming up this Saturday, you'll want to hit that bell for the notifications with Jason going live during the course of the week. And again, specifically, after each Oklahoma game, Jason will be live with you, taking your comments and questions and his take on the game.
Yep, absolutely.
OU and Tulane, Jason, with a long and illustrious history and rivalry. Played one time, 2017. Yep. I got the box score in front of me. Sooner fans, would you take another 56-14 win? I would hope so. So 56-14, the game in 2017. As I look at the passing stats from one Baker Mayfield, relieved by a guy named Kyler Murray, I got to wonder if that particular Oklahoma team with Mayfield and Murray is the only time ever, I got to think, that there were two Heisman Trophy winning quarterbacks and two number one draft picks, overall selections on the same team, relieving each other. That's
an outstanding trivia question. Yeah,
I can't imagine what other scenario would have had Heisman Trophy winning quarterbacks playing on the same team, and then they are also the number one overall pick. I just can't imagine.
No,
I can't think of any such scenario, either scenario, let alone both of them at the same time.
Right. No, that's very interesting. No, I wouldn't think that we would be able to find that anywhere either. Very interesting. And yeah, as you mentioned, 2017. So I think that there's a little bit of intricacy that Tulane brings to the table. You know, they have a little bit more of a kind of a spread option attack that that Oklahoma struggled with early on in that game. So I think it'll be interesting to see with. I think that they've moved. They still run that spread option to a certain extent, but they're a little bit more prototypical in the way they attack you. You know, Michael Pratt was a true freshman who played a majority of the season last year for Tulane. Completed about 55% of his passes, 20 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. So he's much more serviceable back there throwing the ball than some of the guys that they've had in the past. But yeah, in that game, Tulane ran up and down the field the first 2 possessions. Then certainly Oklahoma adjusted and then played much better defensively. But I think you would take a 56-14 game. Specifically, you know, Oklahoma's giving 31. But I think specifically from a defensive perspective, you know, anything under 17, I think it would be a great success for that first game. But they've got a lot of weapons. I think, you know, there's discussion kind of, you know, in the preseason and in the off season was talking about, okay, this Tulane game could be more difficult for Oklahoma than Nebraska, and you know, you scoff at that in the early season. I was like, even though Nebraska, you know, is a little bit down, but the dishevelment within that program right now it's hard to ignore. And those of us that watched. Those of us that watched that game Saturday showed, because, you know, early in the game they were talking about how Scott Frost felt like was their best team, and it just looked like more of the same, maybe even worse. So I think it's not a foregone conclusion that this Tulane team could present some bigger challenges to Oklahoma, specifically on the offensive side of the ball.
Brett Bielema is a good coach, and he will upgrade that program, I would expect. But Illinois is arguably the worst team in the Big Ten.
Sure.
And maybe Nebraska's arguably the worst team in the Big Ten. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. When you look at their schedule, my goodness, this was about the lightest touch they had on the Big Ten schedule. So the numbers are stacked up against them and trying to salvage this season and get to a bowl game. And I'm usually not the alarmist that comes out with those kind of statements before Labor Day. But again, it's Nebraska is a full touchdown favorite against Illinois, losing to a team that was last in the Big Ten in defense and scoring, and just across the board, pretty much the worst or second worst team in the Big Ten, and they just lost. Back to this 2017 game real quick, because I always am amused by these things and just looking back to see what was going on then. Baker Mayfield had the type day that you would have expected, 331 in the air, 4 touchdowns, no picks. Kyler Murray came in and threw a touchdown, 3 for 3 for 103. Abdul Adams, who then went to Syracuse, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. 8 carries, 93 yards. Marcellus Sutton had 6 for 63. So they didn't, they ran it 32 through at 30. And to your point about the Tulane attack, how many teams lose by 6 touchdowns and throw 12 passes? You're down by that many scores and you're throwing 12 passes, but they did run for 237. And so that was Tulane and Oklahoma back in 2017. And you know, you went down the path of Tulane, and obviously Nebraska is scheduled as the premier non-conference opponent, but Tulane has not been necessarily a factor in the American Conference, which has been the strongest of the group of 5, but they've been a team that has, under Willie Fritz, has now routinely, after being down for a long time, has been winning 6 or 7 ball games, going to bowl games, again, in a pretty tough conference, having to play Memphis and UCF and Navy and Cincinnati and a lot of decent football playing schools. And they went to another bowl game last year. And you mentioned the young quarterback, Michael Pratt. As a freshman, he led the nation in touchdown passes for freshmen with 20 last year. They do have their top 4 wide receivers coming back. The 2 Oklahoma fans you may want to look out for, just to get acquainted with the personnel, would be Deuce Watts and Jaquan Jackson. Each caught 31 passes last year. And they've got quite a running back tandem of Tyjae Spears, Cameron Carroll, ran for 12 touchdowns last year, and they actually led the nation. No, I'm sorry, led the American Conference, were top 10 in the nation in explosive running plays. So with all that running back and wide receiver productivity coming back with a quarterback who showed quite a bit as a true freshman, offensively, they could pose a threat and be a pretty good team to get some reps on.
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely right, Mark. I think certainly the biggest challenge of this game will be on the Oklahoma defense. I think it's a good measuring stick to certainly start the season. Obviously, to see what the improvement looks like. As you mentioned, Tulane was a team under Willie Fritz, I believe, 3 straight bowl games, if I'm not mistaken. They were 6-6 a year ago. They lost 3 games by a combined 12 points, I believe. So very easily could have been a 9-3 team. But yeah, I think offensively they were. It looks like almost 35 points per game is what they averaged a year ago. Certainly, it was mostly a conference schedule, but still, they've offensively they're much improved even from what Oklahoma saw in 2017. So being able to the skill positions are solid, as you mentioned, Michael Pratt. Maybe not necessarily what you would like to see from a completion percentage perspective, but for a true freshman, 20 touchdowns to 8 interceptions is an excellent ratio there. And you'd mentioned that they back. I think there's a little on the replacing a couple of kids, and I think there was a kid that got injured in the fall camp, which some of the things that I saw was certainly a little bit of a concern with them going up against Oklahoma's defensive line. But no, I mean, I think this gives Oklahoma a really good barometer check to see how good defensively they are, and I think it's a good. You would like to see, as I mentioned, I think no more than 14 to 17 points. And I say that, but I think it's very critical to understand where those points come from. If they give up 17 points, if you give up a late touchdown, then maybe that's a little bit of a different scenario. But I think Oklahoma has they're starting with Tulane, where they have an opportunity to kind of crank it up defensively and see how much improved they can be.
And before we flip the field and go OU offense against Tulane defense, we got a comment here. Cameron actually left another one that I find amusing. Let me get to that. I guess I'll get to that in a second, because he's got a legit question here concerning the nickel back position and what you expect there.
Yeah, so Grinch actually talked about that a little bit as well. He was very close to the vest and talked about, so Jeremiah Cradell had probably come into the fall camp as what we would think is the starter, and I think he was a little bit dinged up early on in camp, which allowed Billy Bowman to get a lot more reps, and I think that was kind of certainly a value add for him. But Grinch had talked about both of those kids were going to play an awful lot. And really said they would decide on Friday who would start. I think my gut would tell me that I think Billy Bowman has kind of secured that with maybe some of the reps that he got with Cradell out. But I think it's almost like you're going to see a lot in the back end of the defense for Oklahoma. You've got a lot of kids that will play a lot, so I think it's almost like a 50-50 rep perspective that you'll see, and whoever seems to be handling it the best will obviously play more.
Cameron's also able to look into the future and correct me on my trivia question concerning Baker Mayfield and Kyler Murray. So that's going to be doubled up with a couple of Heisman's back to back and number 1 draft selections.
It's so funny, Mark. In some of the I think one of the videos that we released talked about some of the freshmen that would step up, and there was so many comments, and not just here, but I've seen this across the board, that a lot of people feel like that Caleb Williams is today a better quarterback than Spencer Rattler, and I don't know if it's just delusion, or I think if it just kind of goes to the fact that how many quarterbacks have come through this program and been very successful. But let's yes, I think he's played really, really well in the fall camp, but let's not anoint him just yet. He's not played a single snap of college football. So, I think he's going to be really good, and he'll probably be the guy that takes the reins next year. But it's I think it's a little premature to call him better than Spencer Rattler at this point.
I understand for those fan bases that pick your team, Purdue, Kansas, of course. I didn't even want to go to that level, but Purdue, Cal, pick your mid-level program in any conference. And I understand the fascination with recruiting in regards to hoping for better things in the future, and can't wait to see this hotshot quarterback because ours is pretty marginal. And man, we really need to improve on defense. Oh, we just got to commit from this stud defensive end. And I understand that hope for the future, but there's just an overall fascination with recruiting, period, even with the elite programs like in Oklahoma, where it almost seems like the mindset for a lot of fans, Jason, is that once they've seen a guy play a couple of games with the Crimson and Cream on, for Oklahoma, it's like, well, I want to see the next guy. They're more fascinated with the possibilities of the next guy, the guys that aren't even on the team yet.
Well, the backup quarterback is always the most popular guy on campus in the minds of the fans and even sometimes the media. But I think to temper this point, Riley holds his quarterbacks to an extremely high standard, obviously, as you would expect with what they've had, and he's taken every opportunity to this point to talk about some of the things that Spencer Rattler needs to improve upon and his areas of weakness. And I think it was interesting to hear him talk about Rattler a little bit yesterday. He was extremely complimentary of him, talked about he's practicing at an extremely high level. He's playing at a high level, much better than where he was at this point last year. So I think Oklahoma is certainly counting on that, I think, coming into the season, but I think it's good to hear it come from the quarterback coach and the head coach and the offensive coordinators, his lips itself. But one of the things I wanted to know that you kind of pointed out some of the lower tier mid-major schools. I think it's some people will know some of the kids that had come through Oklahoma but maybe weren't quite at the level that they would expect. So Tanner Mordecai is a kid that transferred on. He's going to be the starting he's announced the starting quarterback for SMU. Austin, and I had completely forgot about this till I saw this a couple of days ago. Austin Kendall transferred to West Virginia. It didn't really work out there. He transferred to Louisiana Tech, and he was named QB1 for Louisiana Tech. I believe they play Mississippi State on Saturday. So yeah, I think that would I think that's interesting to see those kids that maybe they're not at the level at Oklahoma, but they're certainly good enough to go somewhere and start immediately at some of these other schools.
Folks, that is not a misprint. We've got a 24-hour live stream coming up on our main channel. Yes, I'm insane, but at least I'm smart enough to get guys like Jason to sit in for a few hours. So we're going live tonight, meaning late night Wednesday, early Thursday morning at 2 a.m. Eastern time. And why start it then? Well, the thought process was that even though we had week 0 games, okay, this is the beginning of college football and the launch is the Thursday night games. So we wanted to provide you with post game after the Thursday night games, which I assumed would take us to about 2 a.m. So rewind the clock 24 hours. So we're going live, and I'm hoping to sleep until about 1:45, and which I rarely am able to get to sleep before 1:45. So I don't know how that's going to work. But anyway, so we will be going live on the main channel at 2 a.m. Eastern, 1 Central tonight. And then Jason's going to step in tomorrow morning, Thursday morning at 10 a.m. till noon. And I've got 2 other 2-hour respites. So I'll be happy to get those naps in for hopefully about 90 minutes apiece. But Jason will be on board Thursday at 10 a.m. during our 24-hour live stream. And no, I figured after sitting here for 4.5 hours the other night and just about to lose my mind that there's no way I'm going to sit here for what's going to be, I guess, 18 hours Yeah. So expect me to, I don't know, walk to the kitchen, fry some eggs in the morning. I'll be, it's going to turn it, it's not going to be your strict college football analysis for 24 consecutive hours. Give me a little time to do a few other things. I may even take the opportunity because this set has been here for quite a couple of years to just clear out the set, and maybe folks can watch me vacuum at like 6 in the morning. I think it could use a good vacuuming. So regardless, we'll have plenty of college football analysis, but you'll see a few maybe more fun things like that, I guess. So it'll be interesting to see what ends up happening for 24 consecutive hours, starting at 2 a.m. Eastern on the main channel. And while we're at it, everyone, this is our Sooners live show, and we're in season now. So grab a friend, grab 5, bring them in here Wednesday, 12:30 Eastern, 11:30 a.m. Central every Wednesday. And again, if you're not able to join us live, of course, that's what we want because we love the interaction with you. But of course, we backed up the live stream during the course of the week when we used to go on Fridays, because that will allow more people to watch it before Saturday's game. Because, of course, once Saturday hits, it's all outdated. And then you tune in, of course, because Jason's got the post game for you. All right. One issue with Tulane is, they can score, but they also give up a little bit on defense. So this team actually was pretty stout up front. Their issues were with the back 7 because they lost their all-time sack leader. He's gone, Patrick Johnson. And actually, all their playmakers on the defensive front are gone from last year. But they've got some pretty impressive tackle statistics, productivity there coming back at linebacker. Dorian Williams in a short season had 98 tackles. So anytime somebody exceeds 100 tackles in a season, they're making some plays. Now, obviously, the defense may funnel it their way, but 98 tackles in a short season, 16.5 tackles for loss. Nick Anderson also had 88 tackles, 10.5 tackles for loss. Marvin Moody with 72 and Kevin Henry with 48. But again, they get in a Colorado transfer, a starting safety for the Buffs last year in Darian Rakeshaw. But otherwise, the Tulane defense was a bit of a sieve in their 2020 season.
Yeah, Mark. So I think this is unfortunately for Tulane, it's probably the strength of Oklahoma's, specifically with the running back depth, issues that we talked about. I think the strength of Oklahoma, at least early on, could be the passing game. So I think you'd mentioned how they struggled a little bit on the backside. They gave up 20. I think they averaged 28 points per game. They gave up 422 yards per game total offense, which isn't isn't completely terrible. But the backside, they gave up 280 yards per game throwing the ball downfield. So I think that's the advantage certainly that Oklahoma has in this game. I think it's a little bit of a strength on weakness situation for Oklahoma, and I think it's another good opportunity for Oklahoma should be able to. You would think if they have problems moving the ball, then certainly there's some greater problems. But I think it allows them to get in a spot where they're more solidified in what their rotations look like. In the from a receiver perspective. From a receiver perspective, you've got about 6 or maybe even 8 guys that have an opportunity to play for Oklahoma at the receiver position, and then some guys at the tight end spot as well. So I think Oklahoma will have specifically the first 2 games to really kind of look and solidify what that looks like from a depth and rotation. I think when you look at a guy. When you look at Theo Weiss and Mike Woods, those guys will probably play a lot. Mike Woods may bring a little bit more to the table in terms of being able to go deep, and then also being able to catch those balls over the middle. Whereas Theo Weiss may be more of a possession type receiver, not necessarily a big deep threat to stretch the defense. But I think Oklahoma has a good mix of those types of kids. You got a Mario Williams that should be able to stretch the field a lot. Maybe he's much more in the Marquise Hollywood Brown mold, being able to either stretch the field long or take that short pass and take it the distance. So yeah, I think it's a good, certainly a good first game, first test for them, just to look and see what that looks like, and which you would expect them to roll pretty consistently early on, in this game Saturday.
So, Jason, I don't know if you're a big believer in the football power index. I don't know if we've discussed it much here. I've debunked it at times. What I would like to see, before I completely debunk it, is just that I would like to see what were those win probabilities at kickoff, and then who won the game. And so then we can start to put together some kind of track record for this thing, because I don't know if anybody's ever tracked this to say this thing's extremely accurate or it's really not. I've seen some crazy numbers, both from the standpoint of prior to the game, and the most egregious one I can think of came last year when Miami played Louisville, which I thought Miami was a better team. And this was before Louisville fell off the rails and they were coming off a decent 8-5 year. So they were the home team. They had an 83% chance of winning Louisville. And I was like, what? So I've seen a lot of those where I was like, where does this come from? But I think what is even more inaccurate is late in ball games, you'll see where a team will be down in a predicament, but not a ridiculous predicament. They're down 2 touchdowns with 5 minutes left. That's not a good situation to be in. Your chances of winning are low, but they're not 0.1% low. And I will routinely see this. So-and-so came back from 14 down and won the game. And both teams are roughly the same level teams. And they had a 0.1% probability at the time and I'm like, what? Did these people watch college football? They were down by 2 touchdowns with 5 minutes left. Yeah, they were in a bad spot. And I would say it was more like 7 or 8% chance of winning, not 0.1%. Anyway.
Yeah, no, I've paid attention to it to a certain degree, and I know exactly what you're saying. I mean, specifically, that I think they have that. They'll show the percentage as certainly as the game is unfolding. Exactly to your point. If that team was down 35 points with 4 minutes to go, yeah, I think you could get there to that one. But yeah, I mean, 14 down with 5 minutes to go, that's not out of the realm of possibilities, even if the teams aren't completely even. I mean, for instance, look at Oklahoma last year against Kansas State. I mean, how many? I would be interested to see what Kansas State's percentage of win was when they were down 35-14 there in the third quarter.
One of the strangest ones I remember seeing was, and I'll have to plug in something in just a second or I'm going to lose it, is in the AFC Championship game, Patriots-Jaguars. Jacksonville was up 10 points with like 9 minutes left in the game. And they're at New England. We know New England's the favorite. They're the supposed better team going into the game. I'm thinking at that point, it's almost still 50-50 because I've got a lot of confidence New England's going to come back in that game and win it. And they gave it some ridiculous, like 99.7%. And I'm thinking, what? So anyway, I just have a lot of issues with that. But then again, I would like to see metrics placed to the prediction record of that, and maybe it would turn out to be, it's not going to be infallible, of course. I'm not raising it to that kind of standard, but I would just like to see some studies done on how accurate it is. So Jason, what do you think the win probability is for Oklahoma in this game against Tulane according to the FPI?
I mean, it's got to be in the upper 90s. I would say with them being favored by 31, I would say 98%.
Now, see, I don't know if they've adjusted this with the change of location, but it was at 93.3.
Okay.
And I'm guessing that it's that low because they're playing at Tulane. That's another thing. I think they're a little heavy on the home road portion of that.
Well, and I think they were, when you just look at the line movement, I think Oklahoma was about a 26-point pick when it was at Tulane, and now it's 31. So I think typically you see, anywhere from a 3 to 5 point scale given to the home field advantage. Some are obviously greater than others. So, yeah, that's a good question. That's a good wondering if they've adjusted that based on the change of the venue.
Jason, someday when we have our 50-person staff here at the Voice of College Football, we'll have somebody just track that. That will be their job. All right. Jesse's on the line. Jesse, good to see you. I don't think we've seen your handle before, so welcome to our Oklahoma show. We're going to be here every Wednesday at 12:30 Eastern, 11:30 Central. Wants to know who the wide receivers are going to be.
So I think 3 of the 4 starting wide receiver, and I'll lump in the tight end position at there as well, is fairly solidified. At the tight end, you'll have Stogner being the starter with Braden Willis backing him up. But when you look at the other wide receivers, I think you've got Jaden Hazelwood at one spot, and I think you've got Marvin Mims certainly at another spot inside. But I think Marvin Mims, you'll have Drake Stoops backing him up, and I think Jaden Hazelwood, you'll probably have Mario Williams backing him up as well. Now, the other position, I think it's a pretty dead heat between Michael Woods and Theo Weiss. I mean, we talked about that just a little bit ago, but Weiss has the experience factor within the Oklahoma program and within the offense itself. There, but then you also, you still have the same experience that Mike Woods has at the college level, but just at a different team, on a different team. I think it's another 50-50. I think, me personally, I would give a slight edge to Mike Woods being the starter, but I still think it's from a rep perspective. I think it's a 50-50.
Biggie, good to see you here at the Voice of College Football. Welcome. And I believe Biggie is alluding to Gabriel Brownlow-Dindy.
That's right.
So what do you think the odds are there?
So I think they're actually pretty good. OU and A&M are the final 2. He just released his final 2 probably a week or so ago. So I think there was some thoughts as Gabe Dindy's father took a position at in College Station that gave Texas A&M a little bit of a benefit, but I think Oklahoma leads. I don't think it's a substantial lead. I probably would give, at this point, I would probably say 65% Oklahoma, 35% A&M. So I think he's in the lead, and I think his family likes OU maybe a little bit better than A&M. So I feel. I'm not extremely strong about Oklahoma's chances, but I do think that they have the lead.
Some people hoping that I don't regret doing 24 consecutive hours. But again, it's not going to be 24 consecutive hours. I am cheating a bit, and thanks to Jason and a few others, Christopher thinks I should get myself some glasses that will make me look like I'm awake. I had one of those nights the other night. I was taking in call-in shows, and I did 3 consecutive live streams, and I was at about 4.5 hours, and I was doing my best. The thing was, I wasn't tired or sleepy. I was just sick. I just didn't feel well, and I was doing my best just to make it through the last few phone calls. But we'll be in good shape tonight. We'll do our best. If I can make it through that first stretch from 2 a.m. to 10, Jason, I may not give you the best handoff. I may just say,
there you go.
I may just point at you or something.
Well, you'll have, at the very least, hopefully I don't know how competitive it will be, but at the very least, when you start off, you'll have at least an actual live game to talk about. One tonight.
No. We're starting tonight. So
you have UAB and Jacksonville State that starts tonight at 6:30.
I'm sorry. Well, yeah, we'll have one game to talk about.
One game. It's not. It won't be a lot. It won't be a big filler, but at least it's a live game.
I got you. There is a Wednesday night game. You are correct. Absolutely.
But, we talk a lot about certainly Oklahoma, but for me, and I don't know how you feel versus this weekend versus the bowl season. The opening weekend of the season has always been my favorite. I like there's so much uncertainty. You get a feeling for some of these teams, and when you get to the bowl season, obviously in the the group of the New Year's Six bowls and then playoff games and those games. But just the amount of football that we have that's just wall to wall from. I mean, this year from Wednesday, obviously just the one game tonight, but you have Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. It's always my favorite time of the year, just to watch football from sun up to sundown.
And that's why I enjoy it. Is that the only thing that I don't like about college football Saturdays is that it's impossible to watch everybody play, and so I will watch any college football game. If week 0 was one game and it was UTEP and New Mexico State, I would just want to watch some college football. Now, Am I watching that game at any other point in the season? No. There are other games to be watching.
Sure.
But that's the frustration once we hit Saturdays when everybody's playing is I see the noon games and I'm like, I'd like to see about 5 of these games, but I can only put on 3 screens, and my attention span and I guess I'm going to chalk this up to age. I like watching one game. And so I got 2 other games on 2 other screens, but I really can't pay much attention to them. And so then my options may change depending on, of course, if my game of choice becomes a blowout, then other games become more attractive. But I do that every broadcast window where I'm like, man, there's like 5 or 6 games I really want to see, but I can only really watch one at a time, maybe 2 or 3. So that's my only complaint about college football is the frustration of trying to watch everybody play at the same time. And that's what makes week 1 so nice, is because it's spread out. They take 2 really good games and put them on Sunday and Monday. And we do have more Thursday and Friday college football week to week than we did 10 years ago.
And I think one of the other things that's really kind of interesting to talk about, and very interested in your thoughts on this, Mark, is the product at home has become so much better than it has been, in the past. And my dad likes to tell me that there's when he was as he was young, there wasn't very many games, maybe a couple of games on for the whole day on Saturday, and now you got with all these streaming options, and I mean you're very hard pressed to find a game on any given Saturday with 2 FBS opponents playing each other that's not on TV, whether it be streaming on through the ESPN apps or any of the others. So I mean I think it's probably taken away the home field maybe experience to a certain extent. When I was young, we had season tickets and would love to go to the game. Like it would be much better than watching at home. But now as I've gotten a little older and I'm more of a kind of a rounded college football fan, it's much better for me to be at home. And to your point, those 5 or 6 games that are on, you at least have a little bit of an idea of kind of what's going on versus being in the stadium. So my grandparents gave me such a hard time when I was younger. Like, wouldn't you rather just stay at home and you can watch it in the comfort of your own home? And I always said no, but now that I'm a little bit older, I've kind of changed my tune.
Yeah. So, just talking about the experience of watching at home. I'm the same way, but I have always thought that I was a fairly young man and I was walking out of the TV station that I worked at, my first job out of college. And somebody asked me, Ohio State and Michigan were playing the next day. They said, Mark, you want to come with me? I got an extra ticket, Ohio State, Michigan. I said, no, thanks. I still wanted to sit at home and watch that game and all the other games that were being played, but that was for me the game. And but to even watch the replays and be able to know what's going on rather than sitting up somewhere and barely being able to see the field, I still rather see the game broadcast with the statistics and especially the replays to know what's going on, and then to be able to flip to all the other games. This takes it down a different path, but it's one of the reasons why, in a sense, it's ludicrous that sports writers vote for the top 25, because I know from working in local television what a game day is like for somebody that's tied to a specific team. Because if I was going to go cover the Alabama LSU game that was being played at 2:30 Central Time, well, we would get to the stadium like an hour and a half before the game. Therefore, we'd have to leave with traffic hours before the game. So we're leaving at 10 in the morning for a 2:30 game that lasts till 6. And then you got to go to the news conferences. You got to go to the locker room, talk to the players. You're not leaving that game until almost 8 o'clock at night. You're driving back. You're rushing to get together the highlights and the stories and the sound bites and everything for the 10 or 11 o'clock news. And you're done at midnight. You've seen nothing of any other college football the rest of the day. You have no knowledge of any other teams in college football than the team you're covering. And these are the people that vote for the top 25.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And I think that's a fair point that you made about the travel. You know, me personally, I live in the Tulsa area. It's about an hour and a half, almost 2 hours from Norman. So yeah, there's 4 hours of drive time plus the game, plus, getting there early. So it just, it takes away, your, for your entire, takes away your entire Saturday. So you don't have, the opportunity to watch as many games and things like that. So, so while we're on here, the other thing that I'm kind of seeing here, and just like moving back to Oklahoma, I'm seeing kind of circulated through social media here. It's not completely been confirmed, but I'm seeing a lot of noise that Theo Weiss might have torn his ACL in practice today or yesterday. It was kind of interesting because if this is the case, this must have happened today, because Riley talked about how healthy that they were overall, yesterday, kind of going into the season. But there's some things here that, they fear he may have torn an ACL. So that's it's certainly a big impact. I think that, again, we've talked about this roster turnover, Mark. We've talked more about it on the defensive side, but I think Oklahoma is much more equipped to be able to handle an injury such as this than they have in the past. So if this is the case, I think you've got, so to look at it from a depth perspective, you got a couple of guys that could probably come in. Not sure how ready they are initially to be able to play, but you've got a couple of guys. Cody Jackson is a guy that was here in the spring. He's a freshman here in the spring, and he's made a lot of big movement here as he's went to through fall camp. So I think he's a guy that might be able to play a little bit more. Obviously, he'll have more of an opportunity now if this is actually what's happened. And then I think you also have another guy named Jalil Farouk, who's a 4-star commitment out of the Baltimore, Maryland area. He was one of the guys that Caleb Williams kind of recruited to come to Oklahoma this year. I hadn't heard a ton. He came in late in the fall. I hadn't heard a ton about him, but one of their second major scrimmages of the fall camp, he was one of the guys that stood out. So I think you've got those two guys have, the opportunity to come in and play. And it's very cliche, Mark, to kind of say this and hear this, but it's almost next man up, and you have to have that mentality at a place like Oklahoma where, one wide receiver shouldn't be one of those things that completely debilitate your football team or your offense. So certainly something that Oklahoma's going to have to battle through, but I think they're in a pretty good position to be able to absorb something like that.
We talk Oklahoma with you every Wednesday. It's now Wednesday at 12:30 Eastern, 11:30 Central. And again, we've backed it up for those people that watch the replay to give them a couple more days to do so before the games on Saturday, because, of course, we were going live on Friday afternoon, and it would have only been less than 24 hours before people would have had the opportunity to watch the live stream. So Wednesdays are new time. New day and time, 12:30 Eastern, 11:30 Central. But please hit the bell for the notifications once you've subscribed, just in case we need to reschedule on any given week. And also bring some other folks with you, because if you enjoy the live streams, others will as well. So please bring others into the chat next week. And Jason will be here after the Tulane game. Do you anticipate exactly when you'll be able to jump online, Jason?
So yeah, just as soon as pretty close to as soon as the game is over, I'll jump on, and we'll do a little pregame thing as well, starting at 9. I'll do like an hour just before the game starts, and then just as soon as it's over, probably around 2:30, 2:45 time frame, we'll get on here and get it cranking.
Awesome. Jason, thank you so much for joining us. You can catch Jason's work also at Last Word on College Football, and again, he's anchoring our Oklahoma live coverage here, as we are here every Wednesday, but also Jason with the post-game coverage starting with the Tulane game. All right, sir. Anything else?
No, I don't think so. Like I said, this Theo Weiss thing is just kind of late breaking that I saw here. So I don't know. There's nothing confirmed, but there's some smoke at least about that right now. So.
Okay. The interesting storyline going into week 1. Feel bad for the young man if his season's going to be compromised in any way. And obviously, as Jason has mentioned, I think you need a balanced approach. Teams will have to face injuries, and if you're truly an elite team, then it shouldn't be an enormous issue. But at the same time, he's a quality player and one of the two or three top wide receivers on the team. So a quality player possibly going to be inactive. All right, everyone. We will see you back here next Wednesday. And, of course, you will be joining Jason post-game after the Tulane game. Jason, we appreciate it. Have a great weekend. Enjoy the game.
All right. Thanks. You too.